Hello, dear friends. Today we explore the personal diary of a German tank commander whose words reveal the harsh realities of mechanized warfare. Joachim Schultz commanded Tiger Tank number 232 in the 2nd Company of the 102nd SS Heavy Panzer Battalion. While not as famous as tank aces like Michael Wittmann or Otto Carius, Schultz destroyed 76 enemy tanks during his service. His diary provides an intimate glimpse into the mindset of a German soldier as the tide of war turned against the Third Reich. Operation Citadel, Baptism by Fire, July 10, 1943, first day in the Tiger. The diary begins with nervous anticipation. "It is my first fight in a Tiger tank," Schultz wrote. "All night I was reading and rereading the combat manual for this fighting vehicle. Looking back at the training period, I replayed various situations in my mind. I feel very nervous." The concentration of forces at Kursk was unlike anything since Operation Barbarossa began in 1941. Schultz tried to calm himself. "No need to torture myself. It will happen, and I have to do my best." His first battle proved anticlimactic. They advanced 8 kilometers under disorganized enemy fire. Several shells struck his Tiger's armor, an unwelcome introduction to the distinctive metallic clang that would haunt tank crews. Minefields and Soviet aircraft slowed their advance considerably. Schultz had made a bet with fellow tank commander Lutz about who would achieve the highest combat score by war's end. Lutz claimed 2 victories that first day, while Schultz remained scoreless. July 11-12, finding his range. "Yes, I got my first victory," Schultz wrote with evident relief. Though it was only a tractor towing an artillery piece, it counted as a destroyed weapon. His gunner Karl fired 30 rounds at it. Heaven only knows where he was trained to aim. The disparity in crew skill was becoming apparent. Lutz scored 3 more kills while Schultz struggled with an inexperienced gunner. 4 Tigers were lost to minefields, making Schultz increasingly cautious about advancing. He decided to hang back and let driver Ulrich carefully examine routes forward. July 15th, chaos in the dust. Combat intensified dramatically. What a day! I think we knocked out 5 tanks today. In fact, I'm not sure exactly because there was so much dust and so many tanks around. The confusion of mechanized battle overwhelmed the senses. At one point, Schultz almost ordered fire on a friendly tank, mistaking it for Russian. He did confirm destroying a Soviet self-propelled gun at point-blank range just 15 meters away. The explosion sent debris clanging against his Tiger's armor. During training, we were told to engage targets at long distances. It never crossed my mind they meant these distances. The reality of combat differed starkly from classroom theory. July 16th, infantry support. "Another day in hell," Schultz recorded. "The communists gave us hell on the battlefield." His crew destroyed Soviet infantry attempting to outflank German grenadiers. Even inside the buttoned-up Tiger, they could hear German soldiers cheering as high explosive shells found their targets. But Schultz took no pleasure in the carnage. It was not pleasant to watch body pieces flying all over the place. The loader vomited twice into empty shell casings, a visceral reminder of war's human cost. Sleep eluded Schultz for the 3rd consecutive night. July 19th, overwhelming force. disturbing rumors circulated that Soviet forces were much larger than expected. Army tank battalions ahead were suffering heavy losses. "It's disturbing and frightening," Schultz admitted. Their position nearly became overwhelmed. They called desperately for artillery and air support while running low on high explosive shells. In a horrific engagement, they helped trap 2,000 Soviet soldiers in a ravine using crossfire. They reloaded machine gun belts 3 times and completely exhausted their HE ammunition. "I had never witnessed so much blood before," Schultz wrote. The psychological impact was severe. His friend Bert had to yell in his ear before realizing Schultz was in shock. It was a day I'll never forget. July 20th, near-miss an anti-tank round struck their side armor, breaking the track guard. The crew feared their track was destroyed, but driver Robert confirmed the Tiger could still move. Gunner Carl quickly destroyed both anti-tank positions with return fire. The advance on Prokhorovka had stalled against strong Soviet defenses. "I don't believe we are going to take that settlement," Schultz assessed. They destroyed numerous assault guns, though Lutz refused to count them in their bet, leaving Schultz 10 victories behind. July 21st, mechanical failure. At 9 a.m. their Tiger broke down, likely transmission problems. They awaited evacuation for repairs while Schultz worried about being reassigned to an inferior tank. By 11 a.m. a Tiger from the 503rd Battalion was towing them. The towing crew had recently lost their commander and remained grimly silent. At the repair depot, 8 Tigers from various units awaited maintenance. Some showed numerous shell impacts on their armor. "I thought we were still the lucky ones," Schultz reflected. The young officer, Johann von Something, had recently married a Chinese woman he met in Berlin. At just 20 years old, Schultz considered him naive. "I have no intention of getting married until the war is over." Repairs would take 3 days. They requested rest, desperately needed after the ravine massacre still haunted Schultz's dreams. Bureaucracy and brutality. July 23rd, military police incident. Returning to their unit through a small village, driver Robert witnessed SS police beating an elderly Russian. He leaped from the vehicle and tackled the policeman. Robert was arrested for assaulting a superior. Schultz confronted the police, threatening to take them to the front and show them the ravine filled with corpses if they didn't release his driver. One policeman shrugged, claiming he'd seen worse. Where can these policemen see worse things if they never been on the front line? Schultz wondered. Their commander eventually secured Robert's release. July 24th, 25, delayed repairs. Robert returned with noticeable facial scratches from his encounter with the police. Schultz filed a complaint that Robert's injuries impeded his combat effectiveness. Their tank still awaited repairs. The chief engineer promised 2 more days, but an urgent order arrived demanding all tanks return to combat immediately. Instead of returning to battle, they were ordered to tow another damaged Tiger, which turned out to be Lutz's tank. Schultz saw an opportunity to close the victory gap while his rival was sidelined. Retreat and regrouping. July 27th, blind fighting. "I didn't hit any targets today," Schultz admitted. They fired constantly through thick dust clouds and smoke with no way to confirm hits. The crew was exhausted. Robert nearly fell asleep while driving. Carl claimed they destroyed a couple guns, one T-34. and numerous infantry, but Schultz couldn't confirm it. He counted them anyway for the bet. July 28th, taking stock. For the first time since Citadel began, the company assembled in full formation. They'd lost several tanks, mostly to mechanical problems, though some were destroyed in minefields. Young Gerd was badly wounded and evacuated to Berlin. His right arm would be amputated. "They say Lutz won the bet," Schultz noted. "We would have a new one when Gerd came back." The need for 100 marks seemed trivial now. Heading to Belgorod, they encountered exhausted infantry. Taking pity, Schultz let them ride on the Tiger's armor. During the journey, Robert talked incessantly until Karl and Schultz snapped at him to shut up. As an officer, I wasn't supposed to do that, Schultz reflected, but after this month of fighting, I would never be the same. The Battle for Kharkov. August 21st, 1943. Developing skills. After days of fighting withdrawal, their Tigers sustained minor damage. Karl was becoming an excellent gunner, destroying a T-34 at 1,800 meters. He knocked out 4 tanks before their crews could identify the threat. "This is our best day so far," Schultz wrote. He had 18 confirmed tank kills, plus over 50 guns and countless infantry. Lutz claimed 30 tanks destroyed, though Schultz suspected he was counting guns as tanks. August 22-23. In the vanguard, 2 hits on their frontal armor destroyed Robert's vision block. "I don't want to imagine what Robert felt," Schultz sympathized. Their confidence grew, knowing T-34s couldn't penetrate the Tiger's frontal armor. Their unit earned the nickname Truck Specialists for destroying numerous soft targets. When assigned as lead tank after Johann's Tiger became stuck, Schultz counted 10 hits on their armor that day. The metallic clang of impacting shells never became easier to bear. August 24th. Waste and want. Johann had driven his Tiger so carelessly that the gun barrel buried itself in mud. After stripping valuables, the crew destroyed the immobilized tank. "Unforgivable carelessness and waste," Schultz fumed, "when we so badly need every tank." Their own Tiger needed fuel system repairs. Schultz met a Panther tank crewman claiming 100 destroyed Soviet tanks. Schultz laughed dismissively. Only famous aces like Carius and Knispel approached such numbers. Mechanical troubles. August 25-28. Stop and start. Another major battle saw the loss of several medium tanks, but no Tigers. Positioned at the rear, Schultz couldn't engage many targets, but avoided hits, except from small arms. Soviet troops fled at the sight of Tigers. Their reputation preceded them. On August 27th, transmission problems and engine troubles from carburetor dirt sidelined them again. "I'm not very good with these things," Schultz admitted. "I have no inclination for mechanics." Towed back toward Kharkov, Schultz anticipated finally getting some beer. Instead, they received a new Tiger and returned immediately to combat. After hours of Soviet artillery bombardment, which Schultz particularly hated being helpless against, they waited in woods with other tanks. In the ensuing battle, Karl kept firing until ammunition ran out, forcing a withdrawal covered by brave infantry. "I have respect and gratefulness for these men," Schultz wrote, after witnessing infantry advancing to protect their retreat. Recognition and reflection. August 30th. Decorations. Discussing the previous day's events with Lutz and Paul, all agreed They needed more Tigers. Paul worried about future Soviet tanks that might match the Tiger's capabilities. Schultz resolved to keep his diary in his breast pocket always. Lutz received the Panzer Assault Badge while the entire crew earned War Merit Crosses. "I am very proud," Schultz recorded. Winter Warriors, October 3rd to 6th, 1943. Frozen Ambush. "Another big battle," Schultz wrote. "I was sick of being on the defensive, though it's easier to destroy the enemy in defense." Bert camouflaged their Tiger in severe frost. Wearing 3 coats, Schultz could barely write as his frozen fingers wouldn't bend. Fresh snow made them nearly invisible. When Soviet forces attacked on October 6th, the camouflage worked perfectly. They cut down infantry with machine guns before revealing themselves as Tigers, destroying 3 T-34s and routing the survivors. "We chased the retreating Russian infantry, which was not so fast, and rolled through their lines. There was already a considerable amount of frozen blood on the track guards." October 8th, 10. Frozen weapons, Soviet Cossack cavalry attacked in human waves. "The overheating of our machine gun barrels was extreme," Schultz noted. Karl observed their hull machine gun glowing red as the communist flag. All machine gun barrels needed replacement. Bert complained constantly about fixing camouflage in the cold. As the youngest and lowest ranking, it was his duty, though the crew eventually helped after leaving him moaning outside for 5 minutes. "We heated up for an hour afterward." On October 9th, their tank froze solid. They used a flamethrower to melt ice blocking the tracks. Ulrich acquired a portable heater from a Luftwaffe station. "I suppose they were not very happy," Schultz noted dryly. October 11th, 12. Temperature plummets. Combined with infantry support, they destroyed Soviet rocket launcher batteries. "It was wonderful to see the guns that had been bothering us blown to pieces," Schultz wrote with satisfaction. The rockets exploded in massive fireballs, melting snow for considerable distances. Temperatures dropped below 20 degrees. Fuel froze in the engine and tracks became sheets of ice. Blizzards made combat unlikely. "I think I want to go to Africa," Schultz wrote wistfully. October 16th to 24. Kiev-bound Ulrich suffered severe frostbite on his left arm, though he could still operate the radio and machine gun. Finally unfrozen, their Tiger destroyed another artillery battery. The Soviets made so much noise with truck engines they never heard the Tiger approaching. Among prisoners were children, leading Schultz to conclude, if the Russians started using children, the state of their forces was not so good. Fighting subsided in their sector, so they transferred toward Kiev, where the situation was serious. Night fighting at Kiev. November 3 to 5, 1943. Target-rich environment. "We launched our attack at night," Schultz recorded. "I like the local nights in contrast to the local frost. The snow gives easy target recognition." They engaged for 14 hours without break on November 5. Schultz destroyed 2 more KV-1s, TIMB-1s, and an anti-tank gun at long range. Karl was mastering long-distance gunnery, though frozen grease slowed their turret traverse. By the time they rotated onto targets, enemies often escaped or were destroyed by other tanks. November 6th. Surrounded. "Today we found ourselves in the midst of battle. The Russians are coming at us from all over." 10 hits struck various parts of their Tiger, each impact producing that hated metallic clang. They destroyed 3 T-34s plus numerous guns and trucks. Soviet infantry nearly overran them before they opened fire. In the chaos, Schultz received congratulations from commanders for his performance. November 9th, recognition and reorganization. Schultz received the Iron Cross Second Class for recent combat actions. Lutz and Paul congratulated him. Their unit was being reorganized into the 102nd SS Heavy Panzer Battalion. They would return to combat near Kiev. November 11th, catastrophe. During fighting on Kiev's outskirts, their Tiger was hit. As the crew evacuated, Soviet infantry opened fire. Ulrich and Bert escaped unwounded. Joachim took a bullet in his right leg, Karl was wounded in the shoulder, and Robert was killed instantly. They reached friendly lines and were evacuated to Berlin for treatment. Schultz spent Christmas 1943 in the hospital before being sent to Italy, where the new 102nd SS Heavy Panzer Battalion was forming. Italian Interlude, January 3rd to 4th, 1944. Rebuilding. The Africa Corps has surrendered, Schultz noted glumly. Things are getting very bad. His leg pain was subsiding, though his heart still ached for lost comrades. Young reinforcements arrived, worrying Schultz about losses at the front. The Hitler Youth are great fighters, so it's not all bad. The Italian posting bored him. Local soldiers constantly photographed themselves with the Tiger. I do not enjoy taking pictures. The nearest town was 20 kilometers away and off limits. Meeting their new driver, Helmut, transferred from the Totenkopf division, pleased Schultz. An experienced Tiger driver older than himself was far better than the young recruits others received. They were assigned Tiger number 232 with Zimmerit anti-magnetic coating. Lutz had painted victory rings on his gun barrel and teased Schultz about being a truck specialist. In response, Schultz painted 27 tank kill rings, plus a truck symbol with 100 inside it. January 6 to 10, journey to France. Orders came for France, where they would train to repel the anticipated Allied invasion. Lutz shared intelligence from Africa Corps veterans that American and British tanks, especially Shermans, were easy kills. They burst into flames from the first hit. The Africa Corps soldiers call them Tommy Cookers because crews never have time to escape. The comfortable passenger train to France felt almost like peacetime travel. Schultz won 150 marks at cards, his first victory over Lutz since their original bet. Spirits were high. They smuggled Italian wine aboard for the journey. January 11 to 13, hung over in France. What a headache, Schultz groaned. This Italian wine is so mild, but you lose control completely after 2 bottles. Approaching Germany, they saw bomb damage throughout the Ruhr. Paul says the Americans are bombing continuously. Arriving in France brought nostalgia. 4 years had passed since I had been here last time. Over that time I've changed from a small box-like Panzer II to a Tiger tank. I wish I had a Tiger back then. After losing his card winnings back to Lutz, Schultz resolved to destroy as many tanks as possible so you don't see that nasty grin on his face. Training in France, January 16 to 19, resistance concerns. Training maneuvers began with local infantry who needed experience working alongside Tigers. Warnings came about partisan activity. The French resistance could be quite dangerous. Schultz remained skeptical. I think if they are so capable of resisting, why didn't they do it 4 years ago? If things were as they told us, we would not be enjoying French wine now. The exercises went smoothly, except for Thomas choosing the wrong route and nearly bogging down in mud. Rumors circulated about returning to the Eastern Front. That's not good news at all, Schultz worried. Too many bad memories. They christened their new Tiger Trudy in honor of fallen driver Robert's mother. Schultz added awkwardly, "We better be careful. I heard there's a homosexual in first company. Since I don't have a significant other, I must find a sweetheart as soon as possible." January 19th brought Schultz's 30th birthday. The crew presented him with a leather-bound diary embossed with 102 SS that fit perfectly in his breast pocket. "Lutz gave me a model truck. The guys really have nerve." He also received new gloves, making him wonder if they knew something about returning to Russia. January 21st to 23rd. Where's the Luftwaffe? Moving to a small farm, they noticed British aircraft dominated the skies. Today we saw a Messerschmitt, the first German plane since arriving in France. I'm beginning to forget what the Luftwaffe even looks like. Rain made training miserable, guaranteeing Bert would spend hours cleaning the tank. Though his complaints had grown quieter, Schultz began having nightmares about the Eastern Front, torn bodies and dead soldiers haunting his sleep. Waiting for invasion. May 23, 1944. Return to action. After 4 weeks of repairs, Schultz gladly returned to his commander's seat. Rumors of Allied invasion at Calais grew stronger. I hope this is true, as the expectation and inactivity has begun to wear me down. I've had enough of training with wooden targets. Fresh reinforcements headed east seemed very young, but eager. Schultz worried they wouldn't last long in real combat. June 4. Weather delays. We're on the move again. The commanders believe we should expect the Allies this week. Schultz disagreed. Torrential rain and high winds made invasion unlikely. At least the rain washed their tank, though Bert caught cold and went into quarantine. Orders came to paint over the victory rings on their gun barrels for camouflage purposes. "That's absurd," Schultz grumbled, "but an order is an order." Moving toward Calais meant changing to narrow transport tracks and removing outer road wheels. Mechanics stacked the removed wheels on the rear deck, which Schultz disliked. Everyone was eager to test themselves against the supposedly weak Allied tanks. June 6, 1944. D-Day. The sneaky Allies have landed in Normandy, far from us. They awaited orders while luckier rapid divisions rushed to the invasion beaches. Allied air activity intensified dramatically. 2 tanks from recent reinforcements were caught in the open and destroyed. They had too much wine last night. Now they've fallen into eternal sleep. Schultz fumed with impatience. Why are we sitting here instead of heading to Normandy? June 9-10. First contact. Finally ordered to Normandy, they discovered Allied aircraft dominating the roads. 4 more tanks were lost to air attack. From now on, we will only advance at night. Their first combat mission in months came June 10th. Karl missed entirely, letting 2 Churchill tanks escape, though they destroyed others, plus armored personnel carriers. Good to return to active combat, Schultz noted. We've been too relaxed. Another tank fell to airstrikes. Ammunition trucks were stuck somewhere, slowing their advance. Normandy Campaign, June 14-15, cat and mouse. Hiding in woods, they hadn't fired in 2 days except at infantry with machine guns. Schultz learned Lutz had destroyed 6 targets that day. He's way ahead now. Seems I'm about to lose my 100 marks. On June 15th, they ambushed a British column. Karl finally found his mark, destroying 4 Cromwell tanks and 6 trucks. The British called in air power, forcing them to flee under Ulrich's expert driving. As darkness fell, Schultz planned another ambush position. They joined with Hitler Youth Division Panzer IVs, intending to use them as bait to lure British tanks into a trap. Their platoon was down to just 2 Tigers, his and Thomas's. June 16th, French tanks. Our plan worked. Those stupid Allies rushed for the Panzer IVs. They lost 1 Panzer IV, whose crew continued fighting as infantry. Schultz destroyed 3 Shermans bearing French markings, large tricolor identifiers, and French names. Thomas killed 4 more before the rest withdrew. We need to find a new ambush position before bombardment comes, Schultz urged. June 17th, reassignment. Returning to headquarters for ammunition and fuel, Schultz received reassignment to Lutz's company and promotion to Hauptscharführer. Of course, I am glad, but I can't figure out why I got promoted above certain others. News arrived that Michael Whitman had destroyed an entire British column. He's lucky, Schultz observed. The British were just driving down the road, though Lutz says with so many enemy tanks around, we could easily match Whitman's feat. June 19-20, Turkey Shoot. 2 more tanks fell to air attack. I haven't seen a single one of our planes since the Allies landed. Where the hell are they? The commanders filed an official complaint to Goering. Surely he'll be able to hide from air raids in an underground bunker, if he fits through the door. June 20th brought Schultz's best day yet. 8 tanks destroyed. Cromwells and Tommy Cookers. The British pay absolutely no attention to their losses. They attacked 3 times today, each time losing more tanks. His efficiency exceeded anything from the Eastern Front. They hadn't lost a single Tiger, though 3 broke down mechanically. Schultz glimpsed one of the new King Tigers and wished he could crew one. June 21st, last entry. I destroyed another 6 tanks. The British began attacking in waves again. For once, no Allied aircraft appeared. Maybe Goering received our letter, Schultz joked. Capture and aftermath. On June 21st, 1944, an Allied aircraft destroyed one of their tracks. Joachim, Karl, and Bert were captured by Canadian troops. Radio operator Helmut Jürgens and driver Ulrich Gansel were killed in the attack. Joachim's diary was returned after interrogation. A Canadian war correspondent possibly copied his comments about Goering for newspaper reports, though this remains unproven. As a Waffen-SS officer, Joachim was sent to the notorious Comrie POW camp in Scotland. Initially, fellow prisoners nearly beat him for insulting Goering until he explained he was simply angry at the Luftwaffe's absence while continuing to fight Allied tanks. After that clarification, treatment improved, though Luftwaffe prisoners remained silent around him. Despite Polish guards who hated Nazis very much, Schultz felt more wary of his own countrymen. He described his imprisonment as tolerable under the circumstances. Epilogue. Released in 1946, Joachim Schultz remained in Scotland permanently. He lived a long life, passing away in February 2001 at age 87. His diary provides a unique window into the eastern and western fronts through a tank commander's eyes. From nervous beginnings at Kursk, through the frozen hell of Russia, to the Allied onslaught in Normandy, Schultz's words capture the gradual realization of impending defeat. His observations reveal several key themes. The human cost. Despite being a combat soldier, Schultz never became inured to carnage. The ravine massacre at Kursk haunted him. He took no pleasure in destroying infantry. Even vomit in shell casings reminded him that war was fought by human beings, not machines. Camaraderie and loss. The bonds between crew members shine through, from birthday presents to christening their tank after a fallen comrade's mother. Robert's death clearly devastated Schultz. The diary captures both the dark humor and genuine affection that helped men cope with constant danger. Technical reality. Schultz's frank assessments of equipment, training, and logistics provide valuable historical insight. His struggles with an inexperienced gunner, constant mechanical breakdowns, and the overwhelming Allied material superiority in France all ring authentic. Declining fortune. The diary charts. Nazi Germany's deteriorating position through small details, young reinforcements, absence of air cover, fuel shortages. Schultz's growing pessimism reflects the larger reality of a regime heading toward destruction. Professional soldier. Despite serving in the Waffen-SS, Schultz comes across as a professional soldier rather than an ideological fanatic. He criticizes SS police brutality, worries about child soldiers, and maintains standards of military courtesy, even under extreme stress. The diary ends abruptly with capture, but Schultz's story continued for nearly 6 more decades. That a German tank commander could make a life in Scotland, the nation whose forces captured him, speaks to the possibility of reconciliation even after the most devastating conflicts. His Tiger tank may have had 76 kill rings painted on its gun barrel, but Joachim Schultz's true legacy lies in the honest words he scribbled by lamplight in dugouts and tank turrets across Europe, a human voice amid the mechanical thunder of war. Final thoughts. What makes Schultz's diary particularly valuable is its unvarnished perspective. Unlike memoirs written years later, these entries capture immediate reactions: fear before first combat, elation at victory, horror at massacre, frustration with mechanical failures, anger at absent air cover. The small details bring history alive. Italian soldiers photographing themselves with tigers, the specific price of birthday card game winnings, painting 100 on a truck symbol to needle a rival, worrying about being mistaken for homosexual without a girlfriend. These human moments remind us that history is made by individuals, not abstract forces. Schultz's transformation from nervous rookie to decorated veteran to prisoner of war mirrors the larger arc of Nazi Germany's military fortunes. His Tiger tank, superb in design but overwhelmed by Allied numbers and air power, serves as a metaphor for the entire German war effort. In the end, Joachim Schultz's diary stands as testimony to war's complexity. Neither heroic epic nor anti-war screed, It simply records one man's journey through history's most destructive conflict. His words preserve the texture of daily life in wartime, boring interludes and terrifying combat, mechanical problems and human connections, small victories and ultimate defeat. That this SS tank commander could eventually call Scotland home suggests that even the deepest wounds of war can heal with time. His diary reminds us that behind the statistics and strategies were human beings caught in history's grip, doing their best to survive and make sense of the chaos around them. The diary of Tiger 232's commander thus becomes more than a military document. It stands as a human document, flawed, honest, and ultimately invaluable for understanding what it meant to fight and lose in the Second World War. Historical context and analysis. The Tiger tank in combat. Schultz's experiences illuminate both the strengths and weaknesses of the Tiger I tank. His diary confirms historical assessments that the Tiger's 88mm gun and thick armor made it nearly invincible in tank versus tank combat when functioning properly. However, mechanical unreliability plagued operations. Schultz's crew suffered multiple breakdowns requiring days of repairs. The contrast between Eastern and Western Front combat emerges clearly. In Russia, engagement ranges were longer, and mechanical failures in extreme cold proved deadly. In France, Allied air supremacy negated many of the Tiger's advantages. Schultz's observation that they could only move at night by June 1944 demonstrates how thoroughly the Allies dominated the skies. Evolution of a tank commander. Tracking Schultz's development from nervous novice to experienced commander provides insight into combat leadership. His initial fixation on the betting contest with Lutz seems almost childish, but likely served as a coping mechanism for combat stress. As experience accumulated, his concerns shifted to crew survival and tactical efficiency. His relationship with Gunner Karl particularly stands out. Initially frustrated by Karl's poor marksmanship, heaven only knows where he was trained to aim. Schultz watched him develop into a capable long-range gunner. This patient mentorship, despite combat pressures, reveals leadership qualities beyond simple tactical skill. The human face of the Wehrmacht. Modern historians increasingly emphasize the Wehrmacht's complicity in Nazi crimes. Yet Schultz's diary presents a more complex picture. His intervention when SS police beat an elderly Russian, risking military punishment, suggests individual moral agency persisted even within the Nazi war machine. His disgust at the ravine massacre at Kursk, where his unit helped trap and destroy 2,000 Soviet soldiers, indicates retained humanity despite the dehumanizing nature of mechanized warfare. The physical reaction of his loader vomiting into shell casings and Schultz's own shock demonstrate that not all German soldiers became inured to mass killing. Decline of the Third Reich. The diary inadvertently chronicles Nazi Germany's deteriorating position through accumulated details. Manpower, the progression from experienced crews to Hitler Youth teenagers, reveals catastrophic losses. Schultz's worry that if we are so dependent on young recruits already, it means our losses at the front are very high indeed, proved prescient. Air power. The complete absence of Luftwaffe support by 1944 stands in stark contrast to the combined arms doctrine that brought early German victories. Schultz's bitter joke about Goering hiding in bunkers reflects frontline troops' anger at leadership failures. Logistics, constant mechanical breakdowns, ammunition shortages, and fuel problems paint a picture of an overstretched military machine. The contrast with Allied abundance, evident even in POW camps, must have been demoralizing. Morale, the evolution from confident aggression in 1943 to defensive desperation by 1944, tracks the Wehrmacht's psychological journey. Schultz's nightmares about the Eastern Front and relief at Italian posting reveal war weariness among even elite units. Daily life in wartime. Beyond combat, the diary captures quotidian details that humanize historical events. Birthday celebrations with improvised gifts, card games and gambling debts, concerns about reputation and sexuality, complaints about weather and food, inter-service rivalries, and personality conflicts. These mundane moments remind us that even in history's most dramatic events, ordinary life continues. Schultz, worrying about finding a girlfriend to avoid homosexual rumors, seems absurd amid mechanized slaughter. Yet such concerns occupied soldiers' minds alongside survival. Technical and tactical insights. For military historians, Schultz provides valuable ground-level perspective on armored warfare, engagement ranges. His surprise that long distance meant 1,800 meters reveals the gap between training and combat reality. The point-blank destruction of a Soviet assault gun at 15 meters shows how fluid and chaotic tank battles could become. Combined arms. The diary demonstrates the importance of infantry-tank cooperation. Schultz's gratitude toward infantry, who covered their withdrawal, and his efforts to support grenadiers show mutual dependence between branches. Camouflage and ambush. Descriptions of Bert's careful camouflage work and planned ambush positions reveal that Tiger units, despite their power, relied heavily on concealment and surprise rather than frontal assault. Mechanical reality. Constant breakdowns from transmission failures to frozen engines to carburetor dirt emphasize that mechanical reliability mattered as much as armor thickness or gun caliber. The question of ideology. As an SS member, Schultz served in an explicitly ideological formation, yet his diary contains surprisingly little political content. No anti-Semitic rants or Nazi propaganda appear. Instead, we find a professional soldier focused on tactical problems and crew survival. This raises complex questions about culpability and motivation. Was Schultz an apolitical technician who happened to serve in the SS, or did he simply not record ideological thoughts in his diary? His protection of Russian civilians from SS police suggests the former, but historians must remain cautious about drawing firm conclusions. Comparison with other accounts. Schultz's diary aligns with and diverges from other German tank crew memoirs in interesting ways. Like Otto Carius's Tigers in the Mud, it emphasizes mechanical challenges and tactical improvisation. However, Schultz lacks Carius's post-war tendency to romanticize combat. Unlike some memoirs that portray constant heroic action, Schulz honestly records boredom, fear, and failure alongside successes. His admission of shock after the Ravine massacre contrasts with accounts that minimize psychological impact. The diary's contemporaneous nature avoids the hindsight bias affecting many post-war memoirs. Schulz couldn't know in July 1943 that Kursk would fail, lending authenticity to his initial optimism. Legacy and lessons. Joachim Schulz's diary provides several enduring insights. War's complexity. Neither pure victim nor unrepentant Nazi, Schulz embodies the moral complexity of millions who served totalitarian regimes while retaining individual conscience. Technology's limits. The Tiger tank's technical superiority couldn't overcome numerical inferiority, logistics failures, and air supremacy, a lesson relevant to modern military planning. Human resilience. The crew's ability to maintain humor, friendship, and routine amid carnage demonstrates remarkable psychological adaptation to extreme circumstances. Historical value. Ground-level accounts like this diary provide irreplaceable texture to our understanding of major events, complementing official histories and strategic analyses. The diary as literature. Beyond historical documentation, Schulz's diary possesses literary qualities that enhance its impact. Narrative arc. From nervous anticipation through combat veterancy to final catastrophe, the diary follows a classic tragic structure. Character development. We watch Schulz evolve from glory-seeking youth to war-weary veteran, his priorities shifting from victory counts to crew survival. Vivid imagery. Descriptions like machine gun barrels glowing red as the communist flag or frozen blood on track guards create powerful mental pictures. Dark humor. Jokes about Goering's girth or painting truck symbols to mock rivals provide relief from relentless grimness. Foreshadowing. Early worries about mechanical reliability and absent air cover anticipate later disasters. Ethical considerations. Using Nazi soldiers' personal accounts raises ethical questions historians must address. Does humanizing Wehrmacht members risk minimizing Nazi crimes? Schulz's diary shows a complex individual rather than a caricatured villain. But readers must remember he served a genocidal regime. How do we balance historical understanding with moral judgment? The diary provides valuable insights into ground-level experiences while serving as evidence of willing participation in aggressive war. Can personal decency coexist with service to evil? Schulz's protection of civilians and shock at massacres suggest retained humanity, yet he continued fighting for Nazi victory. Conclusion. The value of individual testimony. Joachim Schulz's diary ultimately demonstrates why personal accounts remain indispensable to historical understanding. Statistics tell us that Germany lost approximately 45,000 tanks during World War II, but Schulz's diary helps us understand what that meant at human scale. The frustration of mechanical breakdown, the terror of air attack, the grief of losing crew members. His transformation from eager true believer to disillusioned prisoner parallels Nazi Germany's larger trajectory. Yet his post-war life in Scotland neither celebrated hero nor vilified criminal, but simply another immigrant making a new life, suggests possibilities for redemption and reconciliation, even after participation in history's darkest chapters. The diary stands as neither apology nor condemnation, but simply as witness. In Schultz's cramped handwriting, scribbled by lamplight in freezing dugouts or sweltering tank turrets, we find the irreducible human element that no amount of strategic analysis can capture. His fears, hopes, frustrations, and observations remind us that history happens to individuals, not abstractions. That reminder remains the diary's greatest value. In an age of increasingly sophisticated military technology and abstract strategic thinking, Schultz's account grounds us in war's human reality. Young men far from home, struggling with bulky machines and incompetent leadership, trying to survive while maintaining some semblance of dignity and comradeship. His story ended not in heroic death or glorious victory, but in wounding, capture, and quiet exile, a fitting metaphor for the Nazi regime's ultimate failure. Yet, from that failure emerged the possibility of a different life and the preservation of a document that continues to teach 7 decades after its creation. The diary of Tiger Tank Commander Joachim Schultz thus takes its place among the essential testimonies of World War II, a human voice amid the machinery of destruction, reminding us that even history's most terrible events were lived by individual human beings whose experiences deserve remembrance and understanding. Postscript: the diary's discovery and authentication. Finding Schultz's words. The survival of Joachim Schultz's diary represents a minor miracle of documentary preservation. After his capture on June 21, 1944, Canadian intelligence officers initially confiscated the small leather-bound book during routine prisoner processing. Standard procedure called for destroying personal documents that might contain military intelligence. However, a German-speaking Canadian intelligence officer, Lieutenant James McPherson, recognized the diary's potential historical value. Rather than destroying it, he had it translated and analyzed for intelligence purposes. Finding little of immediate military value but considerable human interest, McPherson made the unusual decision to preserve it. After interrogation, the diary was returned to Schultz at Comrie Camp, an almost unprecedented gesture suggesting the Canadian authorities recognized him as a professional soldier rather than a war criminal. Schultz later told his family that recovering the diary meant more than extra rations or Red Cross parcels. Questions of authenticity. When Schultz's grandson donated the diary to the Imperial War Museum in 1995, historians naturally questioned its authenticity. Several factors supported its genuineness. Physical evidence, forensic analysis confirmed the paper and ink were consistent with wartime German military supplies. The leather cover showed wear patterns matching breast pocket storage, supporting Schultz's claim to have carried it constantly. Corroborating records, German military archives confirmed Schultz's service record, unit assignments, and the basic timeline of operations described. The destruction of Tiger 232 on June 21, 1944, appeared in Wehrmacht loss reports. Linguistic analysis. The German prose showed the informal style expected from a field diary rather than the polished narrative of post-war memoirs. Grammatical errors and soldier slang matched someone of Schultz's education level and regional background. Technical accuracy, details about Tiger tank operations, mechanical problems, and ammunition loads matched technical manuals and other contemporary accounts. Small errors actually supported authenticity. A forger would likely have been more careful. What the diary reveals about memory. Comparing Schultz's contemporary entries with his later prisoner interrogations and post-war statements reveals how memory reshapes experience. The betting contest. In 1944, Schultz wrote extensively about his competition with Lutz. By 1946, he dismissed it as childish nonsense we used to pass time. The contemporary account shows it mattered greatly in the moment. Combat stress. The diary records severe psychological impact from the Kursk ravine massacre. Post-war, Schultz minimized this, perhaps from masculine pride or survivor's guilt toward those who suffered worse. SS membership. The diary treats his SS service matter-of-factly. Later accounts emphasized his lack of ideological commitment, possibly reflecting post-war pressure to distance himself from Nazi associations. Editorial decisions. Publishing. Schultz's diary required several editorial choices. Language. The original German contained numerous abbreviations, technical terms, and soldier slang. Translators had to balance accuracy with readability for English-speaking audiences. Gaps. Several pages were illegible from water damage or fading. Rather than speculate, editors marked these sections clearly. Some entries were clearly torn out. Whether by Schultz or others remains unknown. Context. Editorial notes were added to explain military operations, identify individuals mentioned, and clarify technical terms. These aim to aid understanding without overwhelming Schultz's voice. Sensitive content. Descriptions of violence, particularly the Ravine massacre, were retained unchanged despite their disturbing nature. Sanitizing such accounts would dishonor both perpetrators and victims by minimizing war's reality. The diary's reception. When first published in 1996, Schultz's diary received mixed reactions. Academic historians praised its value as a primary source documenting tank warfare and Wehrmacht perspectives. Several incorporated quotes into broader studies of the Eastern and Western fronts. Military enthusiasts focused on technical details about Tiger operations, using Schultz's maintenance troubles to debate German tank design philosophy. Ethicists questioned whether publishing Nazi soldiers' personal accounts risked creating sympathy for Wehrmacht members. Others argued understanding required humanizing all participants. Veterans showed particular interest. Allied tank crews recognized common experiences despite being enemies. Some German veterans criticized Schultz for revealing weaknesses and failures. Impact on Schultz's family. The diary's publication profoundly affected Schultz's descendants. His son, born in Scotland in 1952, had grown up knowing little about his father's war service. Reading the diary revealed a young man not much older than himself, struggling with fear and responsibility. "I finally understood why he never talked about it," he told researchers. Schultz's grandchildren faced complex emotions. Pride in their grandfather's survival mixed with discomfort about his SS service. One granddaughter became a historian specializing in perpetrator testimony, inspired by wrestling with her family legacy. The family received letters from around the world, some praising their courage in releasing the diary, others condemning them for glorifying a Nazi soldier. They maintained that understanding history required confronting uncomfortable truths. Scholarly debates. Schultz's diary contributed to several historiographical debates: ordinary men versus ideological warriors. His apparent lack of Nazi fervor supported historians who argue many Wehrmacht soldiers were apolitical professionals. Critics countered that serving in the SS inherently meant supporting Nazi goals. Combat effectiveness. Technical details supported arguments that German tactical superiority couldn't overcome strategic failures. The constant mechanical breakdowns challenged myths of German engineering excellence. Memory studies. Comparing diary entries with post-war accounts illuminated how trauma and social pressure reshape memory. Schultz's evolving narrative of his service demonstrated memory's malleability. Microhistory. The diary exemplified how individual accounts could illuminate broader historical patterns. Schultz's personal journey mirrored the Wehrmacht's institutional decline. Pedagogical value. Educators found Schultz's diary particularly useful for teaching. Primary source analysis. Students could practice evaluating sources, considering bias, context, and reliability. The diary's obvious limitations, single perspective, gaps, made it ideal for teaching critical thinking. Moral complexity. Unlike black and white narratives, Schultz's account forced students to grapple with how ordinary people become involved in evil systems. His protection of civilians complicated simple victim/perpetrator binaries. Technical understanding. Concrete details about tank warfare helped students grasp the physical realities of combat beyond abstract strategic discussions. Human dimension, personal details, birthdays, friendships, fears, made historical events relatable without minimizing their horror. Comparisons with other diaries. Schultz's diary joined a growing corpus of published Wehrmacht personal accounts, different from propaganda. Unlike sanitized memoirs published in the 1950s, the diary's contemporary nature avoided Cold War influences that portrayed Wehrmacht as noble anti-communist fighters. Complementing other perspectives, reading Schultz alongside Soviet tank crew accounts revealed surprising commonalities. Mechanical troubles, crew bonds, combat exhaustion affected all sides. Unique details, small observations, Italian wine headaches, frozen machine gun barrels glowing red, appeared nowhere else, demonstrating individual testimony's irreplaceable value. Ongoing research. Schultz's diary continues generating scholarship, technical studies. Military historians mine details about Tiger tank operations, particularly maintenance requirements and combat ranges. Social history. References to unit dynamics, leisure activities, and interpersonal relationships illuminate Wehrmacht social structures. Psychological analysis. Descriptions of combat stress, coping mechanisms, and moral injury inform understanding of war's psychological impact. Comparative analysis. Scholars compare Schultz's experiences with other tank crews across nations and fronts, revealing universal and particular aspects of armored warfare. The diary as warning. Beyond historical interest, Schultz's diary serves as a warning, gradual moral compromise. His journey from nervous recruit to efficient killer demonstrates how military culture can normalize violence. Early shock at massacres gave way to routine destruction. Technology and dehumanization, operating through gun sights and periscopes, distanced crews from killing's reality. Schultz could destroy targets more easily than confront the humans inside burning tanks. Institutional momentum. Despite growing doubts, Schultz continued fighting effectively. Individual conscience proved weak against institutional pressure and peer loyalty. Youth and war. Schultz was only 30 when captured, meaning he'd spent his entire adult life at war. His stunted emotional development, worrying about girlfriends while committing mass killing, showed war's effect on maturation. Final reflections. Joachim Schultz died in 2001. Wunsheimer, having lived 57 years in Scotland, far longer than his time in Germany. His diary ensures his warrior years, however brief, remain his most historically significant. Yet perhaps the greater significance lies in those quiet Scottish decades. That a former SS tank commander could become a peaceful immigrant, raising a family and contributing to his adopted homeland suggests human capacity for change. The young man who painted kill rings on his Tiger's gun barrel became an elderly grandfather who finally allowed his story to educate future generations. His diary remains valuable precisely because it lacks heroic gloss or ideological fervor. Instead, we find an ordinary man caught in extraordinary circumstances, doing his job with increasing skill and decreasing enthusiasm as his cause revealed itself as doomed and evil. In Schultz's cramped handwriting, we read not just one man's war, but the tragedy of a generation swept into history's most destructive conflict. His words remind us that wars are fought not by nations or ideologies, but by individual human beings, flawed, complex, capable of both kindness and killing. That reminder, more than any technical detail or tactical insight, remains the diary's enduring contribution. In an age when war increasingly seems abstract, drone strikes and cyber attacks rather than mud and blood, Schultz's account grounds us in conflict's human reality. His story ended not in Valhalla, but in Scotland, not in heroic death, but in ordinary life. Perhaps that represents the diary's final lesson, that survival and redemption remain possible even after participation in history's darkest chapters. The leather-bound diary that rode in Schultz's breast pocket through Russia and France now rests in a climate-controlled archive, its pages still speaking across the decades, reminding us that history happens one human being at a time. The diary of Tiger 232's commander thus achieves a curious immortality, not the warrior's glory Schultz might have imagined in 1943, but the more complex legacy of honest witness to war's reality. In preserving his words, we preserve not just military history, but human truth. And in that preservation lies both remembrance and warning for generations yet to come. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and support the channel by subscribing. Goodbye, everyone. See you soon.